And with that, we will move on to South Africa, where their domestic season is getting underway. Exciting times, because they've obviously they're as affected as everyone else. They were kind of the longest with in terms of the break, in terms of returning to play. We did have the game last week. We had a few games to club games. But we also had the gold versus green.
We did
a game which was just a little lower intensity than some of the stuff we've seen. It's very much the beginnings of their season, and that's what was telling from it. It was great to see these guys back. They are world champions.
Yes,
but we saw it a bit with all the teams returning. The first few weeks of play after such a break, there's a little sluggishness.
No question. I mean, it was 25 to 9, I should say, from Razzie's green team against Jacques Nienaber's gold team.
Yes.
Yeah.
The bigger pack won out, really.
The bigger pack won out. Razzie picked much better, as it turns out, up front.
Well,
so
if it's going to be a bit loose, the pack is just going to decide who wins the game.
Exactly, especially in South Africa.
Yeah.
It was a bit of a, when you compare it to North v South, it was a bit of a slog, to be honest.
But it's a bit of a harsh comparison, because this is them at the beginning of the season, whereas the North v South game came after a full domestic club season where they're all primed.
Yeah, there's no question about that. There was some hope for some lads, especially on the green team, got a chance to show more.
Yeah.
There was poor old Licanio Am in that gold team was a hapless man by the end.
He had a nice break that wasn't converted at the very end.
He did, and he had a sensational play where he shut down what could have been a green try, making a tackle and getting in and getting a jackal after a break by them. But the green team were just much better, and it was very scrappy. There was very little attacking rugby. There was an awful lot of kicking and an awful lot of scrums, and to be honest, the tries came from scrappy plays as well.
They did, yes.
So it was a scrappy old encounter, but a good hit out, as you say.
Yeah.
No more and no less than a good hit out for the lads. I would be, in terms of the style of rugby, I would have loved to have seen them try and play a bit more, but obviously for understandable reasons, especially when you have defenders as physical as they have over in South Africa, you do get punished if you're going to be trying something in attack and it's just not going to work.
If the ball hits the deck, it can be 7 points.
Yeah, you can be really badly punished. They play aggressive D, so it was obviously tough to do that, especially in that sort of Bok showcase game. But you look the week prior at the preseason games, and the Bulls had 49-28 win over the Sharks.
Yes,
and the Stormers
they were
beat
35-0 up at one point in that game. It was a crazy, not a good start for the former in form team, the Sharks. Pre-lockdown, they were in form, and obviously it's all start again. Great to see the Bulls hitting the ground running in that regard.
And the Lions also played the Stormers to complete their little superhero weekend, and the Stormers got the better of that. In terms of what's actually going on in their tournament, we see they have their 7 teams. They have a 7-team competition, Super Rugby South
Unlocked.
Africa. Unlocked
is
the new name.
It is Super Rugby South Africa, but it's Unlocked.
The South Africans are full of locks.
Yes, it's true. Actually, Unlocked is a bit of a silly term.
So we've got the 4 Super Rugby teams: the Sharks, the Bulls, the Stormers, the Lions. Then we got the Cheetahs coming in from the Pro 14, and we got the Griquas and the Pumas, who we see in Currie Cup rugby from time to time as well.
Yes.
This weekend, the Sharks are playing the Lions, opening the show at 6 p.m. Irish and British time on Friday evening. The Cheetahs will play the Pumas in Bloemfontein on Saturday at 3:30 British and Irish time. Bulls and the Griquas will play on Saturday evening 6 p.m. That's in Loftus in Pretoria. And the Stormers have a bye opening weekend. Just to take a sort of a brief look into the competition, we're just going to sort of run through what really to expect from each side, starting with sort of the incumbent favourites, despite that pre-season shellacking, the side that looked so good in Super Rugby. The Sharks, who are my boys.
Yes.
I love the Sharks.
Yeah, we're neutrals, but Daragh will be following the Sharks. He's in his Sharks colours shirt. They're a brilliant team, very physical. They just seem to have a lot of grit in terms of game. They recognise good game. They're the most likely club to go to New Zealand and get a scalp.
Well, they've been the most intense defensive team in New Zealand for a couple of years.
In South Africa.
in South Africa for a couple of years.
Yeah.
They were the informed side pre-lockdown.
Yeah.
They had developed sort of a nice physicality as well as a clinical edge because they had that lethal back three with Fassi, Mapimpi and Nkosi.
Yeah.
As well as just a brutally efficient defensive team, and that combined really well. That's sort of the South African model.
Yeah.
Great defense, great physicality with lethality out in the wings and in the wide channels.
And just a grit in general. Like they're never out of games. They'll even if they cough up a score, they are retaliatory and tough.
Yeah.
Which is lovely to see. They did get blitzed by the Bulls.
They got blitzed. It was their first game in however many months, obviously, but they did get blitzed. And there's just a slight fear that they're not going to be the same force now. They almost certainly won't.
Yeah. Well, Nkosi is injured, isn't he?
Spoon Nkosi's injured. Afalele Fassi, who was the fullback, really pushing for Springbok inclusion, perhaps. Obviously himself and Gallant.
Yeah.
Really pushing for that fullback jersey, I would have thought. But he's out injured. Andre Esterhazen, who had such a beautiful combination with Lekanyo Am in the centre.
He's no longer in at centre.
Yeah, he's left the club.
Yeah.
And I think the last one, there was another loss as well. Mapimpi's gone to Japan as well.
Yes. So the back three is no more. That devastating back three isn't there.
No, it's not. That whole back three is gone.
Yeah.
So it's entirely different. They've brought in some guys. Werner Koch, who you might remember, a giant blonde man who used to play in the Springbok Sevens team.
Yeah. He's a very combative yoke.
He's an extremely combative yoke, and it's curiosity as to where he'll play. I think they stuck him in on the wing, and that seems fine.
Like he's pacey. He plays like a number 7 on a sevens team.
Pitch.
On a sevens pitch. But obviously he has wheels because he's a sevens player. So maybe on the wing. Yeah.
Cool. And they brought in the lad from the Southern Kings, who are obviously no more the right winger, who played Yaw Penche, I think is how you pronounce it. I'm not sure.
Yeah. He was one of the bright lights in what was an otherwise dismal team.
Yeah, Southern Kings team, and he played very well in the Green v Gold match as well with his limited opportunity. He looked quick and aggressive, so he's come into the Sharks. And the other question mark really over in Sharksville is about Kerwin Bosch.
Because he came in that Green v Gold, he didn't look great either off the bench. He looked a little better than Willemse, who had a nightmare. But there's definitely, because Pollard's injured and obviously overseas as well, he won't feature in this competition at all. But he is the Springbok number 10, and it's a question mark beyond that. Yankees is the incumbent guy following. Kerwin is another guy in contention, and he is the Sharks man. And you'd love to see some of these 10s that they do have make the step up and start looking.
It's a curiosity for them. You can kind of see in that regard why they have been a little shy about entering the Rugby Championship this year, and now they've sort of been browbeaten into doing it. Where really they're focused on the Lions tour, but like in terms of form, you know, somebody's going to have to step up, otherwise they're going to be it's going to be
fielding a weaker 10.
Yeah, well, they're going to have a very tough time of it in the Rugby Championship, potentially if they don't, if the guys don't hit the ground running, because Australia and New Zealand so far ahead of them in their terms of their season.
Yeah, just in terms of the season. So
and Kerwin Bosch is one of those guys in the absence of an Andre Pollard. You know, you have a big 10 shirt to fill. Elton has done it before and never quite delivered. He's a bit slight. Damien Willemse had an absolute nightmare in the Green v Gold game.
He really did.
And so the door is open. The door is definitely ajar for
whomever.
For Kerwin perhaps to step in. So I'd love to see it.
Yeah, and he'll have to play well for the Sharks to have a chance as well. But yeah, that's kind of the Sharks as we go into this. Like, were brilliant last year. Obviously, still a fantastic club and team.
Yeah.
But they'll need to find something because the momentum isn't quite with them just yet. But then, speaking of momentum, the Blue Bulls.
Yeah.
Our friend Unbiased Rugby Don's team, they looked fantastic last week. They absolutely blitzed through the Sharks.
They did.
They have made a few marquee signings. They've got a bit more grit about them.
Yeah.
Because they've annoyed us for a few years, the Bulls, where on paper they're probably the best team in South Africa when you read their team a lot of the time. Sometimes, like, that's definitely true, but then you watch some of the plays out of them. Even when Pollard was there a few years ago, some of the looseness would drive you mad.
Yeah, they used to be your least favourite team.
They used
almost
to
in
wreck
rugby.
my head. They'd wreck my head because they'd be so good. They'd pull it off. They'd beat the Sharks one week, and then they'd go away to the Jaguares and put in a terrible show or something. Like it was. They're up and down, mercurial, but just with kind of a softness that I really don't love in my SAFA teams. That was them. But this entity now, like, they have obviously some big guys, like Arno Both has come in, Dwayne Vermeulen, obviously there, like, what a unit.
Champion.
Don't they have Nyakanye, or who do they have up front?
Trevor Nyakanye, I think he might be injured, but he's obviously vital if he is in there.
Yeah, they have
Arno Botha, great acquisition. Gio Applin, who was sort of Ches and Colby before Ches and Colby, a tiny little scrum-capped fast man, has come in at fullback, who's going to be super helpful for them. Mornay Stain has come in a 10 shirt.
The immortal Mornay Stain. Wherever he is, he's found the fountain of youth. He still keeps playing lovely footy. Talking of 10s, like if Mornay is out,
it could happen.
Stranger things have happened. You could go with all the young guys, but if they're not quite cutting the mustard, you still have a Mornay Stain to throw in there.
He could well feature in the Rugby Championship, Mornay Stain. And then obviously Cornel Hendricks coming in to play 12 from the wing. Super exciting. And I've always kind of liked Cornel Hendricks. He's had injury, but I always dug him. We'll see how he does on D, especially from 12.
That's kind of my big point for the Bulls. I think when they string it together, they can generate a nice momentum. They can bully teams. They're big enough to win collisions and score some nice tries. But what I want to see is that defensive grit that we were associating with the Sharks, where just don't let them in. If someone's knocking on the door 5 metres out, don't softly cough the try up and go to halfway. We see too much of that over the last few years. Be bullish. Be very abrasive on your own line, because it's the Springbok way. And I think, to be fair, with Razzie now switching from a coaching job to a director of rugby job, I think that's been the focus. He really does want the Super Rugby teams to rediscover that bite and that grit.
And
the Bulls are kind of as good a barometer for that as any team, because they have all the talent. They haven't quite strung it together. This is the season now, domestic season, a chance for them to hit the ground running and build something.
I see here actually Trevor Onyekanye along with Upo Moje is COVIDed out. Well, I think Moje has the virus and Kanye is a close contact, so he's missing this weekend. But he will come back. His form was stellar last year, so I'd be excited to see him in action as the season goes on.
For sure.
But that is the Bulls, and they would be
good luck to them. I'd love to see them do really well, because then if they come into the Pro 16 with a proper team, I'd be very excited for it. Like I really do.
The Bulls. Go on.
The Bulls.
Don. Unbiased rugby.
Yes, unbiased rugby, but we'll cheer for the Bulls a bit as well. And then we'll move on to the Stormers, the Thormers, Khaleesi Stormers. Wonderful team that they are. Another gritty team.
They're an interesting entity, the Stormers, for me. They've had sort of good seasons and bad and inexplicable poor away form as well as everything else. They tend to be sort of, they have very good players and then not up to scratch players. They have excellent Springboks in their team. Bongi Mbonambi for one, I think is brilliant. Kitsoff in the front row with him and Malherbe. It's a scrummaging unit. It's a scrummaging unit that put the fear of God into an English starting World Cup kind of scrummaging unit. So it's an absolute brutal front row. They got Sia Khaleesi in there. I don't think there's yet sign of Peter Seftotoit. Last I heard of him, he had that hematoma that in his leg that turned into something. It was like, I can't remember what it was, but they said he could have had his leg amputated.
Jeez.
There's some mad thing where they said he had he could have lost his foot, and he was one of 43 ever diagnosed cases of whatever it was.
Wow.
But apparently he was on the mend anyway. But I don't think we're going to be seeing him just yet. But obviously Peter Steff,
return,
awesome player. So their pack, I think, are going to be good. They're going to be competing right up there with the best teams in it. I think the question mark is sort of, in a back line that no longer has the likes of Dylan Lades, where they used to be so fun to watch. But they're halfbacks who were not good in the Green v Goal game, in all honesty, but do have oodles of potential. Herschel Yankees and Damian Willemse, super young, capped Springboks.
Another two who will want to make the step. Like Herschel's already been in the Springbok camp as well, but Willemse has been in and around it. Obviously had a shocker last weekend, but would loved, like, he's another one scrambling for that in that vacuum, that pollardless vacuum. He's another one scrapping for it. So hopefully he can hit the ground running.
I think that those two guys' form is going to be vital. Certainly it's going to be huge if those two guys can be on song for the Springboks, and those two will be vital to get the Stormers ticking
for sure. And at fullback work, Halant as well, a very exciting player, very solid on the high ball. You'd like to see that solidity, and then maybe a bit of verve, and if he can link with Willemse and get distributing, get them wider. But I think if they're to win games, when they win games, it'll be built up front with that bruising pack setting the platform, and then giving those young halfbacks a chance to play with front foot ball. That's kind of what the Stormers' blueprint is. So that's what we expect to see from them. And then we will move on to the Lions. The Lions, shall we?
Yeah, the Lions have they sort of faded away in the Razzie era. They were the best team for a few years in South Africa, and they made a couple of Super Rugby finals. Although sort of controversially, in its time, they managed to make a Super Rugby final without ever travelling to New Zealand, whatever way the schedule worked out.
It was a bizarre one, yeah.
But the Joburg franchise has sort of... It's faded away because of Razzie tightening everything up and focusing more on defence and everything else. But the Lions have a huge part to play, I think, in South African rugby, in making sure that the games don't look like the green v gold game that we saw on the weekend,
too
where
defensive.
Everything is too defensive, where they're not trying anything. They play at altitude and they run you around.
And
so they try
from
and play
60 minutes on, those games get very open, especially if a team's slightly shy of fitness. The Lions can strike in that last quarter up in that altitude.
While it might not necessarily be the best thing for South Africa to have them be the very best team in Super Rugby, as they were for a few years, and Alistair Coetzee sort of tried to make a Bok team on that template, which never ever worked. But they do have a significant part to play, and punishing teams for not being offensive as well. If everyone else is getting too tight, the Lions can sneak up on you and run tries in. They don't anymore have a pack that's as big and strong. They do have Jaco Creel coming back in,
which is good,
but they don't have a pack that's as big and strong as some of these other teams.
Well, the Stormers
full of Springboks.
The Stormers or the Bulls, the big Bulls this year.
But they're going to be fun. They're going to try and run the ball around. They're going to try and test these Springbok defences, and I think that them playing that nice offensive brand is going to be super key to the Springboks arriving at a balanced team in a month's time.
And big question marks over Elton Yankees as well in that 10 jersey.
The other 10,
the incumbent cover. I think you have likes of Courtnall Scosan as well. Got nice flashy wingers as well who can run in, as you say, run in some nice tries.
Marvin Orey in the road played quite well. In fact, in the green v gold game, so he's going to be crucial himself in Jaco Creel in terms of just keeping them alive in those games, making as many plays as he can.
They'll be the slighter pack in every fixture pretty much. So they'll
be about speed. They'll be about speed. The Lions will be about speed, and that's bad thing.
As will the Cheetahs, the other team, our Pro 14 friends, the Cheetahs. Very dynamic, very pacey team. A little loose as well. So kind of the same thing you could say about the Lions, although they play in a different comp. They tend to get wide. They tend to get fast. They play up in Bloemfontein. They're very another altitude team. They can be super dangerous. They have the likes of Bernard van Rensburg and Rhino Smith, dynamic player on the wing. They also have a very experienced Ruan Pienaar at either 9 or 10 depending on where they play him. He's been a stalwart, such a consummate pro. He was a feature of Springbok teams a decade ago, and he's become an Ulster legend since then, a Montpellier legend.
Do you want to include him in your 10 conversation?
I think he's in with a shout. If the point is they have Pollard, and the fear is it's Pollard and then a massive gulf in class, and then Yankees was dropped by the end of the World Cup in favour of 6-2 split, and France Steyn kind of half covering it. So that's where they're at now. It doesn't preclude an experienced head like a Mornay Steyn or a Ruan Pienaar stepping in. Sure.
Definitely have things to play for. Ruan in particular, they are going to have to bring the speed. The Cheetahs are an interesting one. We're going to touch on the Pro 16 obviously later in the show, and there's huge controversy surrounding that because they've decided to exclude the Cheetahs from their deal they've done with the Pro 14. Which has given them a massive chip on their shoulder. They've threatened to sue. Their fans are fuming. I hope that they have the talent to really put a dent in some of these sides, because they have such a point to prove. A side with a chip on its shoulder can be a really dangerous side,
for sure.
But I do, especially like we've been talking in recent times about the Pro 14 and the sort of the dwindling standard of that competition at times, and then you have meanwhile these teams who have been used to playing either test footy or Super Rugby against Kiwi sides. It is a phenomenal difference in terms of intensity, and I worry that the Cheetahs might be blown away by it.
Maybe blown away for sure. They certainly they'll have to step up to do it, but that chip will make them plucky underdogs in most things, and definitely a factor that they can't be overlooked. If a side is looking past the Cheetahs will catch them. Especially up in Bloemfontein.
We know that.
We know that very well as Leinster fans, for sure. And then the other two teams making up the numbers, not really. They're Currie Cup stalwarts. We have the Pumas and the Griquas. Teams we know less about. Obviously, they're not Super Rugby franchises. We'll only ever see them really in Currie Cups. And I think, was it the Pumas or the Greek? One of them made a bit of a run at the beginning of the Curry Cup last year.
The Greeks, I think, I want to say, but I'm not sure.
Yeah, but yeah, no, they're very historic clubs, very proud and very physical as well. Like they're all good sides. Again, these are the world champions in South Africa, and there's a lot of good quality stuff from all the tiers down, and the Pumas and the Griquas are no mugs.
Yes, Pumas are based out in and now I'm going to be it's Bombela. I always get slagged off by South Africans in the comment section for how badly I pronounce their stuff. Bombela, I guess, or Mbombela Stadium in Mbombela, and then that's in the northeast of the country, actually near sort of Mozambique and Kruger National Park. And then they've got the Griquas, which are almost like a derby. It's in Kimberley is the name of the town, but it's near Bloemfontein, very near Bloemfontein. So it'd be a derby really when the Griquas play the Cheetahs.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah,
that's they're the two teams I know least about in this competition, but I'm excited
for them to show us something. I think Curry Cup rugby, the bits of it you've seen, it's a step down from what they're bringing in Super Rugby. So I would worry for their ability to cope and keep up.
But then that being said,
maybe they will.
It's the beginning of the season for all of them here, and behind who knows which teams will be primed. It might be the case that on the first weekend you'll see some teams that are a few kind of stages of intensity, I guess, or have built a bit more and are therefore at a slightly higher level. Even if they're not as strong a team, you might catch a team that just hasn't warmed up into the
you never know.
Of it yet.
You never
we
know.
Don't know.
Maybe we'll see some stellar talent emerge in one of those sides.
This is true. Potentially true.
Potential Springboks. Who knows?
Yeah,
not us.
Not us yet, but keep an eye on them. But in terms of those are the teams anyway. But in terms of the questions of the tournament, obviously this is a preview. We're not going to preview the games in much detail because it's the first round of action.
Yeah.
We're just going to kind of broadly say what we hope to see from it. And I think in terms of the style, we're kind of, it's a 17 comp, and there's a kind of a variety of styles in terms of the traditions of each of the
clashes
clubs.
Of styles.
So styles make matchups, as they say, and there could be some good games. There could be some David Goliath type matchups where there's speed versus power, and like that's what you want from Springbok rugby. As you say, it's important for the teams like the Lions and the Cheetahs to be quick enough to keep those big Springbok incumbents honest about what they're doing, not too defensive minded. Try and score your tries.
I think the Bulls and the Stormers particularly, it's what you've been talking about tightening up, playing sharper, more disciplined, less loose, less soft rugby, using those big forwards to bully teams,
using them
playing
accurately.
Playing smart rugby, not being stupid with the ball, playing your strengths into the game and swallowing up your opposition. The Sharks sort of likewise, the Sharks made a name really in defence. They do have a good pack, they compete solidly. They don't have as many Springboks as some of these other sides, so they do have to be careful not to be caught in the physical battles, but defend, swallow up, kick well, and then hopefully, they have been leaning on that super back three, which is now all gone, as we say.
Sure.
But hopefully some of these guys coming in
can
maintain that sort of Sharks tradition of being very good at containing sides, and then excellent at striking and countering and scoring some tries as well. So they have their own very unique style.
Yeah.
And then the Pumas and the Griquas, I think again you're going to be hoping to see some speed there, because physically they're up against Springboks, and that's just danger. You have to move them about.
You do.
Like the Lions and the Cheetahs, you'd love to see them playing the more offensive footy as well.
For sure. And then other than that, obviously we mentioned that Razzie has just kind of focused on tightening up the club side of it, from top to bottom. He obviously had a job to do in 18 months to get the Springboks ready for the World Cup, and he did it pretty well considering they're now champions with the Webb Ellis Trophy back in South Africa. So now he's turned his focus to this club side, so it'll be an interesting kind of internal competition for him to kind of take stock of where they're at and try and from the top down implement that. That's what we're looking to see from this whole thing, just tighter, better, more professional rugby at the club level. That's
and
what you want to
the other
see.
big point as well is what does it mean for the Springboks? Our guy's going to step up. You're in a questionable situation. Maybe I don't know how many they're going to have available in terms of how realistic it might be for someone like Faf de Klerk to go out. Maybe he will, because the Premiership season's wrapping up. He's done in Sale. Hopefully, I'm not sure if he has COVID or if he's contacted, but some of those guys are going to be able to come from the north to the south.
Yeah,
but some of them may not. So they might have to build a team. They're missing Eben Etzebeth, they're missing Lou de Jager, they're missing possibly Peter Steff still,
Andre Pollard,
Franco Mostert,
Faf de Klerk,
Andre but hopefully they'll have Faf back.
Marcel could see it.
Well, he's in
Ulster.
He could make the trip. But in terms of the team, they're going to have to build a lot of it from these guys. And while there are some good Springboks, there's definitely some room for jerseys to be filled.
Sure.
I think Gallant in the Stormers is going to be a good guy to look at. The 15 shirt is possibly his to lose. But there's other guys who could come in as well, you know. Who's going to? There's certainly room for a winger. Obviously, one, because Cheslin's the other one.
Cheslin is one winger. Yes.
There's room for a winger to step in if Mapimpi's off, and I'm not sure what Mapimpi's situation is if he's loaned out to Japan, but I'm not sure if anything's going on in Japan right now.
Yeah.
So possibly he's in. But you're going to just be keeping an eye on these guys and hoping against hope that guys step up and start to look like we saw in New Zealand. You know, who heard of Hoskins? Well, certainly not me. I'm sure there are plenty in New Zealand, but who heard of Hoskins Tutu a year ago?
Exactly.
And these guys. That's sort of what the other dynamic you're hoping to see, as well as obviously what you're pointing at, the 10 battle.
The 10. Well, that's the last one I have here. It's just who's going to step up at 10. Geez, someone has to, because judging by that green v gold thing, the game the other day. Obviously they're rusty, but it's just if Pollard is their international caliber 10, and Franz Stein is capable of doing the job, but ideally he won't play any minute. If they're in a competitive game at top level, they'll want Pollard at 10 for 80 minutes because they don't trust anyone else fully to do the job there. That has to change. So that's a big dynamic in this tournament, because there are lots of 10s that are going to be getting starting time. You're going to see Elton Yankees, Kerwin Bosch, Damien Willemse in kind of the young bracket, and then to keep them honest, you have Mornay Stein and Ruan Pinar and the like, and Francois Stein as well in there, all kind of jostling for that position. Hopefully one or two of them can make a step up and try and just reach another level of maturity. Like they're all young players. Certainly the three that I listed there, Willemse and Kerwin Bosch and Elton as well. They're at a plateau now. We'd love to see them kind of break through to another level of their game and find something that would be a really good storyline from this.
So keeping an eye on all that, but it's also from our perspective just fun rugby to enjoy. So very much looking for that kicking off on Friday evening. Up the South Africans. Good to have you back in World Rugby.
Absolutely.
Thanks for watching the Overlap Rugby podcast. If you want to subscribe, there should be a button up here. Don't forget to give us a like and share with your friends. And please leave comments down below. We love the conversation. Thanks.